We're on. All right. All right, and then I'll just start here. Hey everyone, we're here to discuss we being Nine Circles and the assorted bloggers. We are here to discuss our album of the month for April. It's now May, I know, but we're doing like retrospective. So you know we take a month, give it a hard-earned thought of which is our album of the month, and then we talk about it 2 weeks into the next month. That works. That's a good system, right? I'm your host, Dan Kaplan, and with me are 4, soon to be 5, esteemed colleagues of mine from the Nine Circles blog. Going in order, we're going to start in the order that they appear in my Google Hangout screen, which means nothing to you, the listener. First up, from way out west, Mr. Vincent Martinek. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm splendid. You're coming in loud and clear, which is always good. That's never a guarantee with Google Hangouts. So,
that is also true.
Did you have you had a nice Mother's Day weekend?
I did absolutely nothing today because my mother lives in Illinois. So I Skyped with her and I gave her tribute, and that's all I had to do.
Wonderful. Happy Mother's Day, Vince's mom. Next up, the working as an extra, soon to be an alternate cast member from the Perfect Storm 2 Electric Boogaloo, Mr. Corey Butterworth. Corey, how you doing?
I feel like we've used that reference before when describing me, but I could be wrong.
We have, yeah, but the hair gets longer, so the references get more intense. How you doing, bud?
Oh, I'm good. I'm drinking beer. I don't care. I'm fine. Nobody gives a shit. How are you?
Yes. I'm lovely. I'm lovely right now. Next up, from out on Long Island, Mr. Chris Voss. Chris, how you doing?
I am doing good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. You are coming in loud and clear tonight. This is
small miracles.
How's things been up your way? Have you converted any necrolytic goats lately? Have you had a nice Mother's Day weekend?
Yeah, no conversion of goats, necrolytic or otherwise. Still doing the Mother's Day weekend. My wife, mother of my child, graciously allowed me to skip out a little bit early to do this, so I am extra thankful this year.
Thank you, Mrs. Voss. Happy Mother's Day. And last but not least, for now, also from way out west, Miss Hera Vidal. How you doing?
I'm good.
We're so thrilled to have you on this podcast. We've all potted before, but this is your first time on a Nine Circles related podcast. So are you excited?
I am very excited. So
yeah, at least that's one of us.
Corey with the
alrighty. Yeah, there's gonna be some
the snark is alive.
Some sass. I almost had some. I tried to combine snark and sass. Oh boy,
the snark is alive in this podcast.
Something new and wonderful. It's snass now forever.
Always thinking ahead. Yes, but the snark and the sass shall flow mightily with the alcohol tonight. We are here, and hopefully we will be joined shortly by our pal Josh Stewart. But we're all here to discuss what we decided on as our album of the month, and that is Panopticon. The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness. Did I get that right?
Sounds good.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, wow, I did. Okay. The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness. The 2-part album from Panopticon, Austin Lund's first effort in about 2.5 years, which is crazy that it's been that long since Autumn Eternal. Yes. But this came out back more than a month ago now. This was very early April, April 6th, and it's been out there. It's been percolating. It's been wafting its folky black metal goodness out into the world, including the Nine Circles blog team, and it's gotten some attention, and we are here to talk about it tonight. Group review, group recap. We're going to be doing these every month going forward, which should be fun. Or maybe for us, I don't know about for you, the listener, but you don't really have a say in that. So,
so you're going to listen to it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, damn it. So let's get started. Going again in order of my Google Hangout chat window here. Vince, Panopticon, The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness, parts 1 and 2. What did you think?
All right. There are, bless our diverse staff, there are going to be some people on here who, for whom Panopticon is not really their thing, whose sole purpose is basically to balance me out because I unabashedly love this thing so much.
Okay.
I have been anticipating this album since I heard that it was supposed to come out last year. So I've been waiting like a year for this thing to drop, and it exceeded my expectations for it. I thought that it was really tremendous. Both in both aspects, with respect to parts 1 and part 2. Part 2 was not something that I was really expecting. But it was, yeah.
For the folks at home, who may not be familiar, Scars of Man, which that's just how I'm going to abbreviate it going forward because that's too long a title to say.
Sounds fun. Yeah.
Scars of Man is a 2-part album. Part 1 is the mixture of folk and black metal, Americana folk and black metal that Panopticon has become known for, whereas Part 2 is basically devoid of metal, and it's basically like a neo folk, like an Americana, like exclusively like folk, no metal involved.
There's some bluegrass bits on there.
Right.
There's there's like a couple songs that are just him doing straight bluegrass, and then the rest of it is sort of just like twangy, sort of like down south folk.
Right, and it's interesting because for me at least, and Vince, you know, like sort of playing off what you said, you know, you'd been anticipating this for a while. My sort of introduction to Panopticon was Roads to the North.
Same.
And
Actually,
it was Roads to the North, and then Autumn Eternal came just a year after, and those were both pretty unabashedly, you know, the folk black metal mix. So to hear this, this you know, sort of continuation of that, but then also abrupt departure from that, I thought was really interesting.
I guess I wouldn't say Roads to the North was my introduction to Panopticon, because I think technically the first Panopticon album I tried to listen to was Kentucky, and ironically enough, I didn't like it when I first heard it. I thought that it was gimmicky. I know, and I have 100% flipped around my opinion on that. I thought that when I first heard it, it was gimmicky. I thought that it did not do what people thought that it did, and I thought that it was just like, it was overplayed. And then I heard Roads to the North, and I was like, okay, holy shit, I get this now. Mm-hmm. And then after Autumn Eternal really sort of like cemented my devotion to Panopticon, I went back and I listened to Kentucky, and I'm like, okay, I finally think that I am starting to understand what's going on. And now that I've heard him do what was a full hour album's worth of basically what was just the interludes on Kentucky, I really like it.
It's different.
It's different, and the question might arise whether or not it should be called something other than Panopticon. Like if he decided to put out just part 1 as like The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness, and then put out like an album under like the Austin Lund moniker or something, versus putting out an album of not metal and still calling it Panopticon. But like the spirit of what the spirit of what makes Panopticon is always like the mix of the two, and so just like putting 2 full albums together still kind of captures that, I think. And there's the thought police come to take me away.
Whoa!
The timing of that was so incredibly perfect, I can't even deal with it.
I take full blame for that because it's my it's like right outside my window, so that's why.
Oh man, Hera, do you want to pause the chat and go out and like take a gander at this high-speed chase going on, or
nah? It's probably someone dying, so it's fine.
Okay.
It's California.
When in doubt, I just assume high-speed chase.
When in doubt, just think that it's people dying, because that's usually what it is.
Vince, it's interesting that you mentioned the departure in style and, you know, considering whether or not to, you know, bill it under a different name. I'm going to bring something up. I did think about this. I'm going to bring something up that I will reference again later. The impression I got, the band that I thought of, even though there is no sonic similarity whatsoever, new or old, the band I thought of while listening to this was, throughout my time listening to this album, was Opeth. And
Really?
And
Please go on.
There's some thunder from me to bring it in. I don't know if the folks on the podcast could hear that, but
I could not.
Okay. Well, yes, it thundered in my neighborhood.
I mean, the clock is going off in mine, so it's their time, my friend.
Yeah. I thought of Opeth a lot while listening to this, and I'll explain in greater detail when I get to my full answer. But the thing I think of when you say that is, you know, Opeth did something similar back in 02, 03. They released Deliverance and Damnation. Deliverance, of course, being more in keeping with Opeth's established sound, Damnation being an abrupt departure. And they billed both as Opeth. And I think it's similar here. You know, like, it's not so much of a departure. It's not like Austin was doing, you know, his folk black metal thing and then suddenly just did like a gangster rap album. Then I would expect him to promote it under a different name. I would not expect to see Panopticon like gangster rap, but because I think there's this element here, like when Opeth did Damnation, there was this element of their sound that, you know, even on the Departure album was still there. There's an element of Panopticon sound, even on the folk side, the non-metal side, that is still there. I don't know if that I don't know if I explained that well, or if that makes any sense, but
so basically
you did.
Natural progression is what we're getting at, because
Sorta.
he's been doing this for so long.
Yeah, not even
natural divergence.
Yeah, or natural progression.
Not necessarily a progression, because I don't know that this is where I don't think he's going to just abruptly shift it into being an Americana project.
Right.
But it is an expansion of ideas that were already present in his music. And it's interesting to see that, like, getting a huge light shined on it, where you have like an hour's album worth of material for stuff that would normally just be like a couple 3-minute songs on an album.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it also kind of just highlights how talented he is at, like, because I thought, like, I've seen a lot of people, especially with people who didn't like this album, they tend to rip on part 2 a lot more than they rip on part 1. But because I liked it, I'm like standing in defense of that. But I thought that it worked really well, and it highlighted for me just how, like, terrifically skilled he is as a songwriter at basically every genre he has tried to touch on, you know, because there was like Roads to the North had a lot of like melodeath stuff in it that I thought worked really well. And it's got the bluegrass and the Americana and the black metal, and so it's just he's astounding what he like accomplishes just like in his day-to-day life as like a prolific songwriter and also a small business owner and a father.
Yeah. I mean, he's covering some ground. That is for darn sure. Corey, your take.
Hi. All right. All right. Let's see. So I've had this album since it came out, and I abstained from listening to it for a while for a number of reasons. One, because it's 2 fucking hours, and the amount of time that I have to actually sit and listen to an album is not about 2 hours per day. So it had to sit and wait. So I followed the rules, and I took it hiking a couple weekends ago, or I actually had 2 hours plus like 8 more to spend with the damn thing. And I guess from the highest level, I'll start by saying I thoroughly enjoyed it. Not in the extent that I enjoyed Roads to the North or Kentucky or I'm Eternal, for example, because it was, even in that setting, a lot to absorb. It was a lot to absorb, and there were some moments, especially on the first half, that I thought were a little maybe drawn out. And it's funny because I know the second half has gotten some grief, relative to the first, but I almost think the second half is almost a better composition than the first half of the album.
I am with you.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But I will say the first half is very top heavy, and when it's on, it is some of the best black metal I've heard in years or in Mr. Lund's career. It is that good, but there are just some moments where I'm like, okay, let's kind of do this thing a little bit. Let's move on here. So it's an interesting album. I mean, you know, I had an unabashed love for the last three, and I didn't go into this one with the same amount of enthusiasm as I had the previous records. But you know, after spending some time with it, it's a tremendous album. And no, I don't think, just to kind of touch back on the point we were talking with Vincent, I don't think it's fair to label the two pieces as a separate artist, because no matter how many spectrums Lund has covered, they've all felt like a Lund project, and this is no different. And it doesn't, I mean, it's a perfect complement to the first half of the album, meaning the second half, obviously. And, you know, you talked about Opeth, and something that kind of crossed my mind as like complimentary albums. I think about like when Wolves in the Throne Room tried to write a complimentary album, and it was just like, this actually worked really well. And I think listening to them in time, like together, one after another, is a perfect way to experience it. And I think it's a great listen. It's something you definitely need to be in the right setting for. I think there are definitely problems with the first half of it, but I can't express enough of how much I appreciate the second half of the album and how well he executes what he's going for with it. But it's a lot. It's a shitload to absorb, and I'm still trying to, frankly, even after all that. So
yeah, absolutely. Chris, your take. You've had this thing for a while too.
Oh man, yeah. Okay. So
and we can hear you. So I'm now even more eager to hear your take.
This is so exciting.
I'm not so sure. So small preface. So I like Vincent. I have been eagerly anticipating this for a while. It was in my article on the most anticipated albums of 2017. So it's been at least that long. I said, well, you know what? I won't put it on 18 because I hope it'll come out. You don't know. I've been a fan since Kentucky. So Kentucky was my first exposure, and it took a while to get into that. But I think it had been a natural progression from Kentucky to Roads to the North, right to Autumn Eternal. I think he kept perfecting this hybrid of black metal and neo folk and Americana, if you want to call it. I don't like to call it Appalachian metal, but you know, that feeling of taking your roots, culture, and community and kind of imbuing it into this malleable genre we call black metal. So I think Autumn Eternal kind of hit an apex of that kind of blend. So I was eager to see what this was. And when it came out, I've now spent a good amount of time with it. I listened to it all weekend again. Didn't take it hiking, but I took it out on a lot of walks, listened to it with headphones, listened to it I have it on digital. I have it on compact disc. I have it on vinyl. I listen to it on every medium I could possibly do. And it is an incredibly frustrating experience for me. So I'll kind of take the opposite of Corey. And I'll talk about my problems with the second half. The first half, I think the thing that's immediately evident is how much better he's gotten as a composer. I mean, there are some songs on here that are amazing. There's a song on here, if we talk about individual tracks later, that is straight up Emperor. And I was shocked at the amount of theatricality and just kind of riffing that he's throwing into. The track is, I'm going to screw this name up, but En General Avsky is probably my favorite track on the album.
I adore that song.
Watch the Light Fades as an intro to this kind of 2-hour journey is astounding. The frustration starts to hit with, that first half there are some things in there that you're just going, oh man, this really needs to end. And part of the problem with that, I think the reason why for that is, as great as the songwriting and the composition has gotten, the production has not risen with it. And this production is just a slog. It is a slog. It is so muffled to me. It just, and I get the aesthetic. Someone who plays black metal and records it, I understand the aesthetic of that mood, but it doesn't do this album any favors. Vocally, it doesn't do this album any favors. He is complete. This might as well be instrumental on the heavier tracks because there's just nothing there.
Yeah, that's where I felt the production lost me the most, was in the vocals. Not so much in the instrumentals, but the vocals for sure.
Well, and the other thing is the thing that I like about the first half is it is trying to be, I think, that quintessential Panopticon album where you have the blend of black metal and Americana and folk and country. And the thing that makes it kind of hard at times is when it gets to the quieter moments, like Watch the Lights Fade, the narration on A Ridge Where the Tall Pines Once Stood, the production on the softer moments is phenomenal. And then it jumps back to this just kind of hazy, muffled, wet blanket production. So it's frustrating to kind of hear so much promise and just have it kind of washed away. The second half, and I've done this both ways. I've listened to each album separately. I've done the 2-hour slog. The second half to me is just as good as it is for what it does. If you're in the 2-hour stretch, you get these kind of peaks and valleys, rise and falls. And then the second half is just this gradual descent. There aren't enough kind of, at least for me, peaks to make it work. I think the second half of this too, my big issue on a lot of these tracks on the second half is he's just not a great vocalist. I really have a hard time with the vocals. The one thing I found that was interesting was most of the clean stuff, and especially the narration on the first disc, are all by guest vocalists, right? Disc 2 is all him, and he's not there. And that's not to say that he won't get there, but I think the second half really suffers from a little bit of sameness in the songs. You do have kind of Across Abandon gets a little bit more of like a harder edge. You have some straight up folk, you have some country tinge stuff. But for the most part, it's just that it's a very constant tempo, a very constant kind of thematic tone. And it just kind of, it doesn't give me at the end of that journey, it doesn't give me kind of the sense that I want out of it, which is not to say, so I don't hate it. I guess it's fair to say I was kind of
get a whole lot of negativity from you, Chris.
No, I mean, there are at least 3 tracks that I love and are probably the best things he's ever done on an album, without a doubt. But I don't know that I'll be revisiting this as much as I would Autumn Eternal, or Roads to the North. I mean, to me, that package right there is just kind of quintessential what Panopticon is for me as a person.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, real quick, will you just turn on your location for me? Just real quick. I'm just going to do something.
If I'm going to hear sirens running, you guys, and you see me duck, just
Vince is going to send a drone with like 1 million stink
Tell
bombs
Vincent he has to cover my post next week. That's all.
Yeah, real quick. Let me just get to LAX and fly to wherever it is that you are. And
oh, that's funny.
You get the ass whooping of a life in about 6 hours.
There are some, Chris, I don't know if my overall take was as I don't want to say like as negative as yours was, but I definitely agreed on some points. I mean, I think I'm with you first and foremost on the production of the first half. Especially where where the Roads to the North and Autumn Eternal, like both those albums, excelled.
Yeah.
This to the point where you can barely even hear him, and his vocals get lost in the mix of everything else. It feels like a step backward. Sort of echoing what Corey said, I think there are some parts on the first half where it gets to be a little much. There's almost, in terms of like trying to do too much or trying to cover too much ground. There are a lot of we're talking. I'm just looking at it now. They're back to back. There's an 11 and a half and a 12-minute song. Multiple songs that approach 9.5, 10 minutes. I mean, it's a lot. You're committing a good portion of time here. And it doesn't, with that production issue, with that sort of, like blurry feel, I don't know. It can wear on me after a bit. Similarly, with the, the folk side, he's very clearly still finding himself as a vocalist. I think that was noticeable right off the bat. I was like, oh, okay, this is
you're doing this now.
Yeah. I was I don't want to say taken aback, but I was, you know, it was something that I had to get used to. And I think it did, to be fair to Austin, it did get better as the album went on, but he's still got some growing to do, in my opinion, on as far as clean vocals go.
There are tracks where it works, without a doubt. There are moments when his kind of deep delivery serves the song well, but there are others that are just yeah. The Wandering Ghost is a great example, but I don't know if it's Four Walls of Bone or Beast Rider. There is one where it is just, man, it just does not work, and it is a shame because, again, for the most part, the songs work. I do think compositionally this is his strongest stuff, but it just it doesn't serve the song when you're at least just not that developed yet. I think he'll find his voice eventually, and this is a great kind of thing to see him develop. It's great to see someone's growing pains, recorded for posterity, because it's definitely a point in time that you can look back to. But for me, it didn't make the most pleasant of experiences.
Fair enough.
Fair.
Hera.
Cat.
Oh,
yes.
No.
Hi, it's me.
Vince, before we jump in, Vince, did you have an addition?
I was just gonna say that the two main complaints that you seem to have are his vocals and like the sense of the album drawing itself out too much. But I agree about the vocals. There are times where I think it does kind of fall flat, but for me, I listened to a lot of like early aughts emo, like Cap and Jazz sort of stuff. So I would rather listen to a vocalist who's not particularly good try very hard than I would listen to someone who's perfect. And I think the drawing the tracks out, I kind of get around that because I don't generally listen to the two albums back to back. I sort of do one or the other based on my mood. And so then it's sort of like more manageable.
Oh, without a doubt. I will defiantly stand in opposition to Mr. Lund's listen to this all at once. You consume the music however you want. But exactly. Even taken individually, it's still like to Corey's point, that first disc, after a while, you're still getting like on a couple tracks. Man, by the time Snowbird and Branches comes, I'm kind of done. And it's really more just the wish-washiness of the production for me more than anything else.
Yeah. We're gonna try and introduce Hera again. Hera, your take,
guys. Come on.
Yes.
Let our first timer speak.
Okay, sure. So my impression of it was, because obviously, I'm very limited with Panopticon because my first album and the only one I've heard so far before this one was Autumn Eternal.
Okay.
And it was just because like someone pointed out to me, was like, hey, you should listen to this. You're into black metal, right? I was like, okay, fine. Listened to it, liked it, didn't think much of it. Now that we're here, it's just like this is the problem that I have with the first and the second is the production. The first one felt a little slow. It felt like it dragged a little for me. And then again, I'm so used to listening to something that's more hard hitting. So this one didn't hit me as hard. But then when it went into the Americana, I was like, this is interesting. Again, my thing with Americana is limited. This is like the first foray into it. But I think I enjoyed the second more than the first. And that's just because the production of the first felt a little wonky, felt a little draggy. And then the second, I didn't like the vocals either, but it felt cleaner, felt easier to digest, I guess.
Yeah. I think there was I don't want to say a greater focus on songcraft, because I think there were definitely, there were parts of the first disc parts of the first part that were very clearly, just like a kind of a breathtaking attention to detail and just sort of spelling out of this vision. But the second, just it felt more whole, more together to me than the first. I don't know if that was your take or
No, that's actually what it is. It's like the
Right.
first one was just like this. There's moments where it hits great, and there's like a Winder tribute in there somewhere. I think
the third track.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is where I'm like, okay, I know Winder. This is great. But then as it goes, it's just like, okay, this is interesting. And then the Americana was like, okay, again, interesting, but I guess it just depends on the mood that you're in. Because I tried listening to both back to back, and it was a mistake.
That makes for a long listen.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta give him some credit because the one thing I've always appreciated about Panopticon's music is no matter what mood you're in or who you are as an individual, you're going to get something different out of his albums. It does have like a personal element to it from a listening experience, and I still got that from these, which was incredible. And just talking about this with all you guys, we all gained something different from this collection of songs, and that's one thing he does very, very well, and that's not anything that I don't think anybody else can really replicate. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Or something. Beer.
Mm-hmm.
Hera, do you have any? I mean, you mentioned liking the second part more. Do you have any highlights, any favorite tracks from the second part that stood out to you? Or
so ironically enough, you know how we mentioned like there's like an 11-minute track, a 12-minute track. Well, you know how the second one starts with the 12-minute track? That's the one that I like the most, because as I tried listening to the first part again, because I think I listened to it twice before I was like, okay, I need to move on to the second, the first time around. At some point it kind of just dragged away, and then when the second one started, I was like, oh, I like this, and then I had to look up the track, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is the first track of the second part of the album.
Yeah.
Same song.
I was like, this is different. Okay, next.
Yeah,
they make that cutoff hard. If you haven't seen the vinyl, so each disc, each half is 2 LP, so it's a 4 LP collection. But on the first disc, they don't give you any indication on either of the 2 records as to what side A or side B or side C or side D. So you're just basically kind of guessing, like, all right, I hope this is the start of the album, man, because they don't tell you on the actual disc.
But by the way, make sure you listen to it start to finish straight through.
Yeah, but listen to it start to finish straight through.
That does seem kind of counterintuitive.
And then to Hera's point, even on the digital, it doesn't break. It just, track 9 is The Moss Beneath the Snow, and that's the start of part 2. And you're just kind of like, all right, I guess this is it. It would have helped to just kind of label it differently.
Mm-hmm.
On Bandcamp, it's one album, but I listened to it on Spotify, and is actually broken up into 2 distinct albums.
Yes.
Same. Yes.
Thank you, Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Blessed be.
Sure.
Praise be.
Praise be.
Yeah, no, it feels like a to your point, Chris, it feels almost like a choose your own adventure Goosebumps book. Hey, here are these 4 discs. Do what you want, but listen to it all at once.
Good luck finding out which one is the first, the second, the third, and the fourth.
Oh god, that is a great. Yeah.
Oh man.
Holy crap.
Well, I feel like my take is going to be kind of measured. I'm not as enthusiastic as Vince is, but I'm not as conflicted on it as Chris is. I'm somewhere in the middle. I liked it. But I'm with Hera. I'm with I forget who else was team part 2. But I like part 2. I really, really like part 2. And I mentioned Opeth before, and this kind of this separation of his sound into these 2 parts, the metal side, the folk side. It made me wonder, and this may not be the case. I may just be thinking this on some sort of fever dream, whatever. It made me wonder if he is at the point that Opeth got to, where he kind of like diverges. Is he at the point where, like, hey, maybe he goes after the Americana side a little more? Might not be, but I think this sort of separation of those 2 parts got me thinking along those lines. And
I was actually, go ahead.
you know, with Opeth, I was very anti that divergence because the thing that drew me to Opeth in the first place was that sort of that juxtaposition of sounds, that their progressive side, their metal side, like the way those two sounds work together was, I thought, the best part of that band's sound. And I, you know, to this day, I still like, you know, the prog side is fine. But I will never like it as much as old Opeth. This, I think, if, you know, were he to go in this folk direction, I would almost be very for it. And not to say the metal side isn't good. You know, I thought, you know, Chris, to your point, and General Avsky was fantastic. That arpeggiated riff.
Yes.
Dun, 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 like that is insane. And
Do it one more time.
No.
I mean, that was pretty spot on.
The En
I'm
Vit
impressed.
Ravensdod, the second track. Yeah.
Yes.
Also very fantastic. But to me, the folk side is, even with his vocal issues, that is, I feel like there's a brighter path forward on that side. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's like, you know, I'm sort of, you know, since we became acquainted with Panopticon, there has been this sort of overgrowth of folky black metal bands. Maybe it's just fatigue with like folk black metal. Maybe I'm just like longing for something different, and the folk represents that much of a difference that I'm more drawn to that. I don't know, but for whatever reason, the folk side stood out to me much more. I appreciated it. You know, Wandering Ghost, Beast Rider, just not much will change when I'm gone. Like you know, by and large, you know, setting aside those two highlights on the first disc, by and large, the folk side appealed to me much more throughout this. I thought it was better produced. I thought the songs themselves were more memorable. I don't know. So he may just go back. I may just be like talking out my ass here. He may just go back to doing the combination folk black metal stuff, and it's fine. He's very good at that. But I was, you know, for these reasons, I was more drawn to the folk side. I think I'm just getting, I think there's just too much folk black metal out there, and it's, you know, sort of law of diminishing returns type stuff.
Yeah, it did feel a little stale. Am I going to get shit for saying that it felt a little bit stale the first part? Because it did for me.
No, I feel however you'd like.
Safe space, guys. Safe space.
Except for Vince.
Except for Vince.
Left the conversation. Hera, you scared Vince off.
I think he's coming to New York, guys.
I think
feel a little unsafe.
I think Boss scared him off.
Actually, he might be coming to me first because I think I'm closer, but he might murder me first. So you guys don't hear from me tomorrow. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, no.
Someone schedule my posts.
But yeah, it did feel a little stale. I remember listening to the first one. I was just like, why is it dragging? And maybe it's because I do listen to a lot of black metal just in general.
Yeah.
Maybe I just found the point where I'm like, okay, I think I'm this is peak. I'm done. But
so
I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, that's
really
interesting because I mean, despite being the one who and thank you for calling it conflicted, Dan, and not just outright hating it, because I don't. But as conflicted as I am, especially on the second disc, I would be perfectly fine if he just continued kind of refining and working that angle. I have always been Foursquare, and I know people give a lot of Opeth grief, but there's so much music in the world. You can find that stuff anywhere. I am all for bands chasing their muse. If your muse takes you in this direction of this kind of folk Americana Appalachian kind of hybridization, go for it, and more power to you. And as long as it's challenging and it's sincere, I am going to follow it even if I don't like it. So despite not liking this, it doesn't diminish my enthusiasm for anything he's going to do in the future. And my hope that the next one is going to resound with me a little bit more.
Yeah.
agreed.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's, if a certain sound is sort of is tugging at you, is calling you, like, by all means, go for it. You know, if he
Von Till thing.
Yeah.
This reminded me a lot of Von Till.
Same.
Actually. Yeah.
Same. Not as good, but you know.
Not as good. Yeah. Well, that was part of my problem with it.
Well, hey, maybe he'll get there. We don't know. This is his first try at this stuff.
So we talked about, the vinyl and not knowing what side was what. Would we have preferred the album or the songs to be sort of interspersed between each other instead of part A, part B between black metal and folk? Or that's the one thing I couldn't decide. Like if I wanted to have those folk songs like mixed in with the longer black metal tracks, or if we wanted them separated as they were.
I mean,
go ahead, Chris.
If it's meant to be taken as one long sequence, and please don't listen to it on your laptop speakers; it will sound like shit. I think I don't think it sounds much better. Yeah. I don't think it sounded much better anyway. But I mean, if it's meant to be taken as one long thing, I think it doesn't work split like that. I think split apart, it works great to have one folk album and one kind of mix. But if you're doing it as one long thing, like I said, you kind of, and this isn't visual, guys, but I am kind of making weird gestures with my hands. Make of that what you will. But there are these, peaks and valleys, and when you get to the end, there, I expect to not just be on an hour-long slide down to the bottom of just melancholy. Despite the fact that The Devil Walked the Woods is not, I wouldn't say it's the most melancholic song on that disc, but it's just this slog to get through, and there's not enough there, at least for me to bring it up. I don't know that putting black metal there would have helped, but just you can tweak that folk kind of neo folk formula to be a little bit more dynamic, I think, than what you get particularly in that second half of that album. It gets a little samey for me. Whereas the first part, I'm with you. Wandering Ghost is probably my favorite song on that second disc. And just for the nature of it just kind of separates itself out from the rest of the very kind of monotone, slow paced churn of the folk music that comes after it.
It reminds me, I mean, you mentioning that, it reminds me of, and I know I bring this up because Corey and I talked about this exact thing.
Disclosure, I may not remember this conversation.
I don't think there was alcohol involved, so you might.
No excuses then.
Do you remember it was a couple of years ago now, Shamash and their album Triangle, and how
of course I did. That was like my number 2 or 3 album of the year.
Great album.
That third disc was largely like ambient and darkness and mood and everything like that. Yeah. So there is a place for that kind of thing, like that kind of come down, I think. Shamash, I think, benefits from A, like not being as long, and B, not really having that combination of sounds to begin with.
They did a really good job that year putting together 3 half-hour albums, basically.
Yeah. Whereas Panopticon, when you come to expect folky black metal from them, and you get one that's like predominantly folk, 1 hour that's predominantly metal, and another hour that's predominantly folk, the come down feels that much longer.
It does.
And that's when I can see Chris's argument there.
Yeah, it would benefit from like mixing both of them together, or maybe just like trying to weave them together. I'm making gestures too, but it looks like you're crocheting instead. Like you're knitting them both in, like weaving them in and out, as opposed to just like.
Is that what crocheting looks like? I've never done it.
Wait, what?
Is that what crocheting looks like? I've never done it.
No, I used to know how to crochet, but I forgot. So, like this, you use a thumb and you keep going. But
we got to put this back on YouTube, guys.
So now you'll see all my weird hand gestures, but no, it feels like it would benefit from being weaved together as opposed to just keeping one side here and the other one here. Just because, the countdown does feel like you're just waiting for it and it never comes.
It's a long calm down.
It's a lot for, especially if you're doing the whole like I'm gonna listen to this the entirety for 2 hours. It's a lot.
Right.
I mean, if you expect a 2-hour listen, I think you gotta mix things up a little bit more than just A/B sort of thing. But I guess
and that I want to bring that up too. Like Corey, you mentioned not being able to listen to it for a long period of time. Like that was me. I didn't get to it until basically after school let out for the semester, because like I did not ever have, I wanted to give this thing my full attention, and I did not have 2 hours to listen to the full thing. While I was studying for exams and while I was, doing nursing school shit. Sorry, Austin. I did get to it. I did get to it eventually, but
I mean, I can tell you exactly when I listened to it because I record these kind of things. I listened to it about 6 days ago. So sorry, Austin.
Well, according to the liner notes, Austin seems to eschew all types of social media and technology. I don't think he's going to care too much.
Good.
Which is fine too, though, right? Because
that's kind of the point.
If nothing else, this very much feels like him doing what he wants, and I don't want an artist to do anything other than that.
Correct.
Right. So I respect that. I'm going to assume he will respect that not everybody is going to, respond the same way as well, and that's perfectly cool.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I admire the ambition behind it. I mean, just the work that it clearly had to have gone into a 2-hour, 2-part album. Unreal. Hats off to Austin in that regard. And I don't want to wish any disrespect on anyone who hears this and gets a lot more out of it than I did. I mean, I liked it, but that's it. I didn't love it. But if someone else loved it, that's great. More power to them. For me, I would sooner go back to Roads to the North. I would sooner go back to Kentucky. I would sooner go back to Autumn Eternal, any of the old stuff.
Oh, thank God.
Vince is back.
Whoa.
I returned from the void.
But welcome back.
Vince used rejoin call. It's super effective.
Yeah. No, actually it isn't. That's the problem. On the tablet, it was just telling me that I couldn't join, so I had to go get my laptop for some reason.
Oh, man. Well,
Life is so hard.
I'm just glad you weren't on a plane to the East Coast.
Yeah.
Coming before I was. It would have been bad.
You missed a lukewarm, not entirely like, not entirely dislike take from me. So
we're very indecisive.
Okay.
It was fine. It was fine. That's where I'm at.
I knew I'd kind of.
We all agreed that we appreciate the ambition. It's a hell of a thing, and I mean we're all still foursquare behind checking out whatever he does in the future, though.
Absolutely.
So don't beat me up, please. I
kind of knew I'd be I'd sort of be the opposition, being like the most vocally pro person, but I just I love it hard, and I guess it's also weird.
That's what she said.
That is exactly what she said.
Yes.
It's also weird. It looks like I'm the only person who enjoyed part 1 more than part 2 as well.
Oh no, I enjoyed part 1 more.
Oh really?
I just didn't enjoy either of it.
Yeah.
Right, Chris?
No. So I mean,
more than part 2, but I disliked them both.
Again, and they're the songs that I think Dan called out. So I mean. I apologize, Austin. Make these easier to pronounce in the future. But En Hult Ravensdod and
fix the
and General Avsky, those are to me the 2 best songs he's ever written. I mean, they're just phenomenal. I wish I could hear them more clearly, but I think from a compositional standpoint, just there's stuff that he's doing. Even Blattman, which is the Vindir tribute. I mean that, and a lot of people seem to have given it a little grief, but that crazy, almost kind of pop metal hook in the beginning, it's such an earworm, and there's some killer solos on it. I mean, there's stuff that he's doing on there that he has never done before.
It sounds like a Vindir song. It sounds exactly like a Vindir song.
It sounds just like a Vindir song, right? I mean, it's great.
And then he froze to death, but that's the point, isn't it?
Which is
hopefully
probably why Sheep in Wolf's Clothing is so harsh.
Yeah. I would hard agree with respect to Enfade Ravensdad. That's like the best song that he's ever written.
Yeah, well, it feels like an encapsulation of what Panopticon is, right?
And that's exactly why I feel that way. It hits every single note that you want from a Panopticon song all at once, and it is the finest composition that he's ever done. I mean, like the violin on that song, the way that he wrote that in absolutely kills me every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hopping on Google Translate right now. I want to see what Enfade Ravensdod.
It means a white raven's death. I actually looked that up myself.
Of course you did. Why would you have?
Yeah. What about? I had the same thought too, and I'm like, I wonder what this means, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And if anyone's wondering, and General Absky is a general disgust.
Yes.
Okay.
I just did that, and
That's
now
like my constant state of mind.
Blataman.
Yeah, right? Yes,
Blataman.
I looked that up and I was like, oh, big mood.
Google Translate cannot figure out Blataman, so we're just going to call it Blataman from here on out. But yeah, a White Raven's death and a general disgust. I think those were my two highlights as well. I think those are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Hey, can we have just called those songs?
What's up?
Can we have just called those songs a White Raven's death and a general disgust? Like,
I was wondering the same myself. He could have.
But
He very could have.
Where's the fun in that?
So I just looked up what Blatiman means.
Oh,
and
cool.
I think it might work. It's blue hour, which in the context of winter
would kind of
makes total sense.
kind of tie into the whole
also a song that could have
hypothermia
been
thing.
called Blue Hour. That seems appropriate.
I mean, again, the guy froze to death, so it totally makes sense.
Yeah, man. But it's funny, because Austin's based out. He's based up in Minnesota now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's funny the timing of this. I was just listening on my way back from my parents' place earlier today. I was listening to a Mark Maron podcast, and he was doing dates in Oslo, or as he referred to it, the birthplace of Minnesota. Which maybe Austin is embracing that. Maybe he's going to his new homeland's roots.
I don't even think it's new homeland. I think he is Norwegian.
Oh, is he?
Like,
He is.
Yeah.
He has
like I think
roots
I think he is like he has like Norwegian ancestry, and that's what he's trying to tap into.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that
It
makes
would
sense.
be it's fitting that he started using the Norwegian song titles now that he lives in like the Norwegian capital of the United States.
Yeah.
Unless you want to also count
It says
Northern
too, right? So
Wisconsin.
the album takes inspiration from the words of Sigurd Olsen. So I'm guessing, some of that is in tribute to the writings. I don't know if you guys have seen like the vinyl and how it looks, but inside there are.
See, this is why we have Voss here, because we don't have these liner notes to explain this to us.
There are like
we
massive.
We don't have
massive
nice
liner
things.
notes on the sleeves.
Yeah, we don't have $60 to buy the
First half of the album.
the quadruple LP set that sold out in like 38 minutes or something from the label.
It's really pretty. It's all in blue and pink, the inside. But they do have liner notes.
It's always pink.
No lyrics, but liner notes. And it does talk a lot about his general disgust with things for Ein General Oski. So I guess it does make a little bit of sense. But apparently he is very taken with those writings, and this is that representation of that. So name your stuff however you want, I guess. But it's going to be hell trying to I guess that's why he didn't send it to any reviewers.
I mean, I knew
Maybe that's
one
it.
person who had it. I know one person who had the album before everyone else, but I don't think she reviewed it.
Yeah, I think there were definitely
Don't
people
narc
who were
him.
close to him. There were definitely people who were close to him, I think, who got copies of the album before it came out, because I saw people talk about how they were listening to it before they came out, but there was also a point of pride that he mentions. It's on Bandcamp where he says like no one was asked to review this album.
Yeah.
And that's sort of I don't know. That's sort of I guess it's odd, but
Well, to be fair, everyone's going to review it anyway.
Everyone's
a
gonna
fairly
review it
large
anyway.
name, so great
Why
stands.
would-
No one's going to review it. Everyone's been waiting for the album for a year and a half. Everyone's going to have thoughts on it anyway. So
sure.
I'm not saying that this was a shrewd marketing move, but it's a shrewd marketing move, even if it wasn't construed as such.
That's kind of how I read it as well.
Yeah.
Oh man.
This site has jaded me. I yearn for my innocence. I yearn for the innocence of not knowing this stuff.
Also, Olsen also froze to death. So this album has a lot of people freezing to death. Imagine how that went into it.
There's a theme.
There's a thing. Don't freeze to death, you guys.
Yeah. The word of the day is hypothermia.
We gotta write a song. We gotta write a song called "Don't Freeze to Death."
Chris, you're on it.
Yeah.
Make us proud.
I'm doing it.
Anyway,
Holy crap.
any going around, any final thoughts on The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness parts 1 and 2?
What
It's
direction?
good, actually.
It's good, actually.
No, I agree with
Vince is like metal mansplaining us right now.
yeah, I'm
Before he
about
logs
to.
off forever.
Actually, you guys just don't understand the
No.
really diverse history of how production works on black metal. I don't know why you're talking about it like that.
Well, the weird thing,
I mean, since the 90s, Norwegian lo-fi black metal is really a
comic book guy
signature of the
has joined the
genre.
call now.
Yeah. I have my college degree was in audio arts and acoustics, so like
Oh, there it is.
I really
Jesus
could.
Christ, Vincent. God damn it.
I can't stress enough how much I don't want to be that person.
You just became that person.
I guess I sort of did, and I apologize for that. But
Apology
yeah,
accepted. Moving on.
Yeah.
it's good. I understand the criticisms that people put forth from it, but for me, it wasn't enough to diminish how much I really, really enjoyed that album. I think that it is definitely, there are moments on there where it really, like, it is the compositional highlights of his career, like Chris said. These are some of, if not the best songs that he's ever written, and when you stack an album full of bangers like that, it's just going to be good.
Probably the first time in recorded history that anyone has referred to Panopticon's tracks as bangers.
Bangers.
Yeah,
Even though they absolutely are, but
yeah, it bangs
I'm
I'm not
and
sure
it
that
slaps.
terminology and
Yeah.
Panopticon have ever been melded together.
Yeah,
Do they
that's-
slap? Is
I hear bangers and
Yeah,
I hear
it's-
highlight reel.
It bangs and it slaps.
Bangers
definitely
with
no
bangers
fun.
with a Z.
It is.
Bangers
It is
with a Z,
shocking.
like Miley.
It is shocking how much I have to resist putting like it effing slaps in like every review that I write. Just like, because that's just how I categorize things, and I have to be like, no, you have to be professional about it. You can't just write it slaps and call it done.
Vince, challenge accepted.
I'm gonna do it one of these days.
at least one. I mean, we have to have one review where that's literally all you
Yeah.
write.
I will.
Yeah,
I will not
there's-
edit the shit out of that at all. I will publish that motherfucker
No.
right quick.
When I get the right album, I'm just gonna end it with "It's a certified banger," and then
It's a certified banger and it fucking slaps.
it slaps.
It's just saying it's
Which
not.
nutsack.
Buy it.
Oh man. Corey, any final thoughts?
Not really. I mean, I think we covered a lot. I liked it. It's fine.
Any final thoughts? No.
No.
I mean, shit, man. I enjoyed a lot of it. It had its flaws, which we've covered, and that's pretty much the sum of it. So, move on.
Fair enough. Chris.
Yeah, just 1 second. Josh Stewart is trying to get in, but he's actually not done listening to the album yet, so he's going to take a break. It's literally that long of a slog for him.
Were those your final thoughts, Chris? Was that
No,
like
those are my.
I really hope so.
It is good. Despite my frustration, I can't not agree. Compositionally, it's the best stuff he's ever done. I think it's ambitious in scope, and it's just very frustrating to me at points. But it's still good. I don't think it's it's certainly not one of my favorite albums of the year. But there's some brilliance on it, and I can't wait to see whatever the guy does next.
All righty. And Hera?
I feel the same way. Like, it's good. Probably won't pick it up anytime soon. I need to be in the right mindset for that.
And have
But
like 3 days off from work.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I probably won't pick it up again. Maybe, but not really. But it was good. Let's see where it goes.
All righty.
That's it.
This is probably an album I won't fully absorb for like another year and a half.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's a good point. I reserve the right to change my mind if it suddenly clicks
Yes.
down the road,
Agreed.
which is totally fine.
We can come back on this in a year from now.
Yeah.
Well, but Chris, you gotta be aware. I mean, this is a primarily internet-based medium we're operating on, so you are going to get called a dirty flip-flopper if you
Oh
do
no!
that. And
Oh,
a
no.
commie. And
Well, as long as I'm not called Sleepy Metal from Metal Sucks, I'm fine. I don't mind.
well, who gives a fuck?
Sleepy Metal.
Sleepy Metal from Metal Sucks, who also like led their review, their shit that comes out today this past week with fucking Seven Dust. Like Who gives a flying fuck if they call you sleepy metal? I don't.
Look, I was told afterwards that all publicity is good publicity, so I sold some records from it, I'm sure.
There you go. There you go. Well, I like I said, I'm somewhere in the middle. I like it. I think definitely has some highlights. Definitely has some things that I, will come back to. Definitely has some things I may not come back to. But I really like that folk side, and hope he continues to pursue that side of things. So, well, for Vince, Corey, Chris, Hera, I am Dan Kaplan. This has been our album of the month. We will be back sometime in June with May's album of the month discussion. Amorphous. I was going to try and keep that a secret, but Corey beat me to it. We're going to talk about Amorphous next month. So
I don't follow the rules.
That is fine. I made no indication of my plans to keep it a secret, so it might as well not be a secret.
That's going to be really interesting because I'm going to be in some of your guys' shoes because I've never listened to Amorphous before.
You're in for a treat.
Vince, to quote our not present dear Finnish friend, leave the hall.
Oh, I've been banished by the surly Finn.
Or you know what? Leave the hall, listen to some damn Amorphous, and then come back into the hall. You're always welcome.
Well, which is more in keeping with Anton, to be fair.
Yeah,
because that dude is a teddy bear.
We're not going to slander his good name when he's not here to defend himself, but he is quite a nice gentleman.
Yes.
Well, yes, Amorphous, Queen of Time, that comes out May 18th. That comes out this Friday. I'm so excited.
I've been waiting so long for that bloody album.
Yes. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about next month. Tune in, hopefully, around this time next month, if we're doing for continuity's sake, to hear our thoughts on that. But until then, this has been the 9 Circles album of the month. Panopticon, The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness is out now. It's available on Bandcamp. It is available on vinyl as our boy Chris so lovingly displayed to us. Check it out. It might be your thing. So yeah, bye.